How you doing, everybody? Hi, Tony. Hi, Kaz, Hans. How you guys doing? Donald, Bruce. Good to see you guys. Um, well, it's good to see everyone. We were talking this morning. Some of you had joined us about, trying to figure out what is a really good place to get a really good buy on something. And it, it I found that it's sort of like well, what do they call that? That little poke-a-mole or something like that, where one goes down and another one comes up. Whack-a-mole. That's it. Is that there's there's certain things that happen, and you never know. Yeah, whack-a-mole. That's it. Hey, Captain Zed, how you doing? So I think it's important to that, and especially something. Hi, Mark. I tell you something that some of us, sometimes a lot of us, myself included, sometimes is that we'll pass judgment prematurely, and by that I mean someone will say, "Well, this place is awful," and so if somebody says that to me, I generally listen to. I listen to everybody. It was, and but then I find sort of the contradictions that at some point you sort of have to really sort of circle around and sort of like we've got this red-tailed hawk outside, and he circles around and he's looking for squirrels and field mice and some unfortunate pigeons that my wife likes to call doves, and and he sees it and whew, down he goes. And I think in some ways there's a lesson for us in this respect, is that I don't think we can take everything as absolute unless something really happens that say, like, okay, these guys are done. I mentioned this morning, there was this place, great prices, great selection, great everything. And I looked up the guy on Google Maps, which I found out very important. Then I sort of zeroed in into this strip mall and place where I guess he had an office, or at least he had a mail drop or an address. And then I finally called him, and it was sort of like, oh well, we don't have any of these watches. Like, it was okay, and I thought he didn't sound. I don't know. He's more of like the guy who was either clueless, or he thought, well, I'll be a watch salesman for a while, and maybe had some watches, but he decided that he'd get a lot more attention if he had all these other ones. I have no idea, but it's sort of like, well, I'm not going to waste my time anymore at that place, as opposed to the guy who's a out and out crook or something like that. I don't know what the guy is, but it was such a strange reaction. Is like, I don't know, like, like he got grounded or something by his parents. So he said, well, I'm going to start my own watch company. I don't know. There are all kinds of weird things like that going on. Oh, hi, Hans and William and Rohit and Greg. You guys, how you doing? Nepheron, Rohit again. James Con 11. Another place to look is Time Speaks. Yeah, that is a good one. It's a Japanese place. And if you're interested in Antoine Peruzio's, they have some of those there, because I've gone to look at those there. It's really good. So let's see what else is going on. Let's see. Thomas, let's see, Rohit. Hey, Raj. In the UK, the best place to look for collectible watches are charity shops. Then now that's a very good tip. I don't know if they have charity shops here with watches. Does anybody know a similar shop here in the U.S. where I guess My mom used to belong to something like that, but the charity that her and her organization gave out were all like clothes and things like that. But I don't know of anyone who said, "Well, here you go, girls, take this Patek Philippe, and I hope you can raise some money for whatever charity they were working on." It's weird. Oh, let's see. Hi, Jean-Claude Bieber. How you doing? And Junior. Hi, Junior. Um, very few charitable watch collections. Yeah, Rohit. That's sort of my idea too. Another place that I found out, really an interesting one called Wish. Have any of you ever gone to wish.com? It sounds like someplace that, like a Make-A-Wish Foundation or something like that, but it's not. It's like they got junk from everywhere. And so I went to wish.com because one of the subscribers to Watch Our Site said, "Hey, I had a friend who got about a $6,000 Seamaster. It was an Omega Seamaster for like $1,000, something like that." And I thought, "Oh, that sounds pretty good." I don't think those are. So I went there to take a look at it. Man, I tell you, they got everything under the sun, and I think you just have to be very lucky to find a watch. They want you to sign up for it, and I got so much junk mail now that I just don't want to sign up for another one. But if somebody knows about that or bought a watch through them, I'd like to hear about it. Doggone it. Oh, rats. Mark, is that on your end or is that on my end? In terms of, yeah, how's, hey, where's Mark J usually has been pretty good about telling me how things are going on this. Mark, are you still here? He's in. Oh, okay. All right. So I guess that's okay on this end. Okay. Hi, Mohammed. How you doing? Luxury Souk in Dubai is a good place for watches in Dubai. That's another thing. The U.S. has a lot of places. A lot of people tell me, they say, "Well, you guys in the U.S. have all of these great places to buy watches, and we don't." And there's a place in England that's a great place for buying cases and movements and dials. I forgot the name of it, but it's a place I don't know. Well, we have something here in Ofry, I think it's something Ofry, and he's pretty good about it. Okay, good. Thanks, Mark. Anyway, hey, Daniel, how you doing? Hey, what's new in Mexico? There was a watch for sale by a guy in Mexico, and myself and several others are still kicking ourselves for not buying it. He had this wonderful FP Journe. I forgot what the model was. It's a type of chronomet souverain, except they're fancier and they're really neat. So Daniel, from now on, if there's a really good deal for Mexico, I want me to know. You don't have to tell the rest of these guys, okay? Hey, Orange Hand, how you doing? Great, good. I tried a number of things to try to have it this morning. We had no problems with the video or the audio. And so I thought, well, what I'll do, I restarted my system and did a lot of other stuff. So maybe that did help. Hi, Hans. Okay, hi, Orange Hand. Okie doke. So some of the other things they were talking about. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to do is sort of the whack-a-mole effect of good ones coming up and down all the time. Another one is and it's really hard for me to say, I was warned about going to 47th Street. I don't know how many of you know about that, but in New York City, right off of Fifth Avenue, and if you turn toward 6th Avenue, you'll be going down a street called the Diamond District. And there are these fabulous watch shops. I mean, when I say fabulous, you can see every watch you can imagine there. But I was told you got to be careful in there because I think just about all of them are pre-owned or pre-stolen or pre-something. And I was saying, don't go there, don't go there. And I, like I had mentioned earlier today, that I found some of my best stuff there. So I've always been sort of like, okay, I don't want to tell anyone. If you're in New York City, be sure to go down there. And I don't think you'll get robbed, not on the streets. I don't think anybody would last 2 minutes trying to mug someone on the street there. Something about that place that looks like you just don't, you wouldn't even dream of trying to snatch something, because you'd be either dead or arrested in no time at all. So anyway, when somebody says to me, don't do something or don't try something, it's something I think that, you get several opinions on. Like this one guy who told me not to, definitely don't go there, and don't go to another place. And I went to both and got great deals at both of them. And then I was told, well, don't go to this guy because, he will do X, Y, or Z to you. So that was sort of something I wanted to kick around with you guys, is that, and I mentioned this morning, I had really great experience at this one place in Switzerland at one time, went back, and it was the opposite. So things change. And this is where I guess sort of the whack-a-mole analogy came up. Yeah, pre-stolen. You don't have to steal it yourself. They've done it for you. One of the things that this guy who I got my FP Jorns from, and who was on 47th, he ran down to off of Madison, is where they have the FP Jorns store. He took the watch in there and found out whether it had been stolen or not. And they checked it out and they said, no, it was fine, which is sort of a nice thing to know about. And so what I always do, like I only got two, but if I get another one, I'll run down to the FP Jorns store and get a new strap for it. Not because it needs it, but they have these special straps that are sort of rubberized on one side and then critter on the other side. And so, that way there's some kind of connection there. And it's like, oh, hey, that's a nice watch, or that's a problem. Also, too, when I have it serviced, I go there and they send it for me, and then they send it back to them, and it'll either send it to me from New York. That just makes life a lot easier. Let's see. People often recommend meeting in a bank. Then you can get money counted and checked that it's real. Everything is on CCTV. That that may not be a bad idea. If you're going to have a cash thing. I once went down with an envelope full of cash. I don't think I'll ever do that again. That was like, oh, well, this will make it easy for everyone. And it did, but something could happen to you if you do that. That's not a wise move. So I don't know. Meeting in the bank. My bank is, as soon as you get off the Metro North and Grand Central Station, you walk out going toward 45th Street, and there it is. There's my bank. And so, in my case, Thomas, that would be probably good advice. Let's see. Yeah, it was face mask. No, meetups here. Tier 4, no meetups here. Okay, unless you meet at a supermarket or go jogging. Yeah, man, I tell you, there's the lockdown is, oh man. Hey, Clyde. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still trying to sort of figure out something that would be like something surefire. Generally, I think the thing that Chrono 24 has is pretty good. If you go through Chrono 24 and then they hold on to the money until you get the watch, and then you can check out the watch and everything. And that works out pretty well. I just finished a transaction with a guy. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but he had God, it must have been almost 2 years ago now. Maybe not that long. It seems that way. That he was buying a bunch of movements, and he asked me. He says, "Hey, you want one of these movements? And if so, I'll order one for you." So I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So I sent him the money for it, at least the bulk of it. I think at the time I wasn't sure, and so all of a sudden I get it. Like, here it is, and I thought, man, I tell you, that did take a long time, but it's worked out. I got this beautiful movement. I'll be talking about that at some other time. Hi, dear Aller IT King. How you doing? What is a good place online to buy vintage watches? Boy, vintage watches, I don't know. That would be very difficult to me, but there any vintage watch guys might be able to tell you. Waving at the beret. I was warned not to buy a watch from a lawyer in Oklahoma, but I did always. Had a good experience. Yeah, I know. I've heard about them. They're hard to catch because you got to, first of all, catch the ambulance. And then you can make a deal with them. Their eBay. Very trustworthy site. You should have listened. You know something about somebody said this about eBay was that they have good protection for the buyer, but not for the seller. And I thought that was sort of an interesting comment. They have a number of stores, eBay stores, and I like those because usually you can just, either use your credit card or something like that rather than having to use PayPal or some other way. So anyhow, there's another kind of thing that's sort of interesting. I don't, unless I really worked with someone before, I feel very nervous about sending them a wire their money. This next watch I want to get, it's exactly what I have to do, and that's the only way I can get it. And I was given sort of a very nice deal on the thing, and I figured the guy seemed like he about as trustworthy as you're going to find without having met somebody. We'll see what happens. If I'm here whining in a little while, you'll know why. I never bought vintage online, but want to buy a watch in LA. It has pretty good reviews. Which one is it, Orange Shannon? The rest of us will go buy it first and tell you how it went. How's that? I can't really think of a big online dealer that really has vintage. No, I can't either. You know why? I think one of the problems with vintage is that I think a lot of guys are afraid to get stuck with it. And so, you can build up inventory and not be able to move it. Matthew Bain has a good reputation for vintage. MatthewBainInc.com. Okay. Time Titans in Oregon has a very unique selection of vintage. Haven't bought from them, no. Thanks, James Con. Another one, they have some very high level vintage is in England, is the guy that had sort of warned us about Hush Hush, is the contented, what they call the contented watch collector or something like that. But his stuff, he has some excellent vintage, but not, if it would be the kind of vintage he could, a collected man, I think is the name of it. He would have a Breguet. Okay, now that would be vintage, but most of his stuff is something else. Birth year watches in UK always have a good selection of vintage. That's the name of it. Okay, good. Thanks, Raj. My experience is the best place is IRL. Ooh, okay. Clyde, what is IRL? I think I'm asking for it, but I'll ask. What is IRL, Clyde? In real life. Okay. Yeah, they have, that's because of the pandemic, things have become dicey. By the way, my this came, my Europa Star. I got a notice from them about 2 or 3 issues ago saying that if I didn't pay up, they were gonna quit sending them to us, and so I didn't pay up, and they kept sending them. So I'm good with it. Couple things though that they had in here that were very interesting. One was an ad by, of all people, ETA, and I was asking why in the world would ETA be advertising? I think they made it very clear to everyone that the only people who were going to get their watches, I mean their movements, were Swatch. And so why would they advertise in a magazine like this? It's like, so what are we, what are you trying to tell us? You don't have to advertise to the guys in Swatch. You can just send them a memo. See, this is the ETA ad that I ran into, and it's, there it is. They got this model, a slinky looking one, and they have a picture of all of their movements and so forth, and it says shape movements with long autonomy. Why would they be advertising here? I mean, they've got Europa Star is that they have a lot of a lot of the so-called articles are really sort of paid articles, and it's sort of an interesting thing, though. I was going to ask you guys about it and ask you what you thought. Oh, one other thing too before I forget. Also, in that same magazine, they were talking about, instead of calling them gray markets, they've joined, I think, a lot of us who call, they're secondary markets. Gray markets, to me, is still an attempt to act as though if they don't come from an AD, they're somehow shady. But in fact, they're a secondary market, and everybody uses them because their own ADs need them, because otherwise they're going to have to eat their inventory, and they don't want to do that. And anyway, the article I'd mentioned had talked about, they were saying in the pandemic, the secondary markets haven't been hit as bad as some of the primary markets, which I thought was really interesting. I think if some guy's got a shop down the street in London, he's out of luck with the shutdown. In LA, my God, I've got a son who lives in LA, and I worry about him all the time because it's going crazy there. And so he went to Montana to go skiing. There was nobody there. It was great. Write a letter to the editor. Would love to read it. Which editor, James Kahn? You want me to write? Oh, the editor of. No, I want to hear your wisdom. Eurostar's next title: Old Men in Berets Are Deadbeat. What? Oh, what a thing to say. Let's see. IRL has become dicey, but I hear the best way to get a discount at an AD is to start coughing. Go in there and take your mask off. Okay. Okay. Dealers are amongst themselves. That's true, because most secondary market shops are online. Yeah, Donald, that's a good point. I think not only have secondary markets moved online a lot more, there are a lot of, you go to, I think it's not Breguet, but one of the other ones I went, and I'm Omega maybe. You go in there and they have all of their dealers and stuff. But then they say, well, are you buying from us? Not a problem. The same thing with Van Cleef and Arpels. They had a watch exactly like the one that Clyde recently got, and they gave it to me at like a quarter of the price. So I thought that was, heck, that's really the way to go. Okay, best place is what's among other collectors, enthusiasts in your area. Yeah. Yeah, there seems to be another world with the vintage, and of course, vintage keeps changing. It's sort of now, I think a lot of people look at anything from the 20th century, including the 1990s, as vintage, and to some extent they may be. I don't know. What do you think vintage is today? What would you say? Okay, well that's vintage, and it's not what I'm looking for. Um, there's another group of watches and watchmakers from the early 2000s and late 90s who, like Roger Dubuis and Daniel Roth and a number of other ones. His name Vincent Calabrese, Antoine Peruzio. Not so much Antoine; his stuff is newer. But there were a number of who were selling watches very late 90s and early 2000s, who were sort of like watchmakers who at some point decided, well, I'm going out on my own. Most of them had a rough time, but there are still some real gems left from that period. Oh, James Caan, what are you guys picking up my beret for? Any experience with Sellita 500 series manual chrono movement? Oriented, I gotta tell you, hi Tennessee, Mike, how you doing, man? The only experience I've had with Sellita where it got very personal. I took this one class on watchmaking, and you had a choice of, well, you were supposed to get an ETA, but they said, well, this Sellita, I think it was a 210 that they had, a Sellita 210, something like that. So I started taking the thing apart and everything and putting all of the parts in different places and making a photograph of every step of the way. And man, I lost more parts for that. They have little bitty parts. Now, that's true with any little bitty movement, and this is why I like the 6498 so much, is that they're a lot bigger. But still, my feeling about Sellita is this: is they're a lot better than most people give them credit for. The one I took apart, I didn't think really much of it. When I disassembled it, even though I never got it back together, I was able to see all the parts, and they were okay. And I took apart an ETA, not a clone, and it seemed to be a little better quality. Now it was a Unitas 6498, but but since then I've been looking a lot more at Sellita, and Sellita seems to be taking an upward turn. That's all. That's just sort of my opinion on it. But that particular the 500 series I really haven't looked at. Hi Geezer. Kadoki is hiring. Kadoki? I mean, it's Kadoki and his dog Spot. I think they were the only two that were at Kadoki. And I know that he and Marco Lang were having a lot of discussions about something. So those are some things that have any of you bought directly from a watchmaker? Like when I got my Harboring 2, I got it through a guy in Philadelphia who's one of two sources in the U.S. you can get them, and I think that he buys them directly from Harboring. I just don't know if that I think would be sort of fun. Directly from Kadoki or one of these other guys. The 1 watts that I did get directly from a watchmaker was the one from Rolf Lang that 14 of us had that we passed around for a year, and otherwise I haven't bought directly. Oh, you bought directly, Hans? Yeah. Thomas. Okay. What was Thomas? What's Thomas? Well, what is Thomas doing? Okay. Just directly from micro brands. Yeah, that for some reason, there's something I like about that. I don't think, you could, I guess you could get taken to the cleaners by a watchmaker as well, but I don't think so. Frying pan time. Okay. Well, listen, guys, thank you all for coming today. I was working on something else on a thing, and I'm going to try to have it for everyone tomorrow in a little vest pocket, and it turned out to be a big surprise for me. So anyway, I'll have a little something for you tomorrow, I hope. In the meantime, I'm still trying to get the second hand on my watch. I mean, on my the 2892 A2 that we're working on. How about the rest of you? Do any of you have you made any progress on that so far? I'm still where I was the last time because I just can't get that blasted second hand on. No. Okay, guys, take care and stay safe.